Caseus, Jedi Master. Chapter 9. The days passed. Now that Liara was wielding an actual lightsaber, their training duels would have to be handled with an added degree of caution. Caseus knew that Liara was growing, and that her skills were not something to be overly concerned with. However, accidents could happen. And when dealing with a weapon like a lightsaber, accidents weren't something they could afford. One morning, Caseus woke up and waited outside for Liara so they could begin their morning routine. But Liara didn't come outside. After 20 minutes, Caseus decided to go into the nebulous and see what was wrong. As he stepped inside, he saw Liara kneeling down by a small bed. "Liara, you're late. What's the matter?" As Liara turned to him, Caseus saw her eyes were red and puffy. Concerned for his student, he stepped closer and saw her leaning over Daku, lying still and breathing harshly.
"Caseus, I think Daku is sick. He won't eat, he's not moving. He's just laying there."
Caseus looked at the small creature and stepped closer, kneeling and placing his hand on Daku's head as the squall softly and weakly rubbed up against his hand. Closing his eyes, Caseus tried to sense what was wrong. He didn't feel sick, but his life force was fading. Caseus knew what was wrong. "Liara, he's not sick. He's old. And I think his time is coming." Liara's eyes welled with tears once again as she held Daku in her arms. Caseus felt pity for her. As close as he and Liara had grown over the years they'd known each other, Daku was her companion. It made him think back to R3. Daku was to Liara what R3 was to him, a close friend. "Under the circumstances, I think we can take the day off from training." Liara looked at Caseus. He could see that training was the least of her concerns right now.
"I don't want him to go."
"I know, Liara. Saying goodbye is never easy. But think about Daku. How happy you've made him. Being a friend to him, feeding him, taking care of him. Now it's time for him to go. And we'll be here for him through it. Both of us." Liara closed her eyes and kissed Daku on the top of his head.
"I'm here, Daku. We're here. It's okay."
Caseus put his hand on Liara's shoulder and gently pet Daku's ears as he closed his eyes and softly let out one final breath. Then he was gone. Liara broke into tears. As much as Caseus saw Daku as more of an annoyance for so long, even he felt a lump form in his throat as he held Liara close. A little while later, Liara carried Daku in a wrapped blue cloth and gently placed him into a small hole under a tree that Caseus had dug. Without any words, Liara covered the hole and placed a small rock with Daku's name on top of it. As she stood, Caseus walked over to her and put his arm around her as she hugged him. "This is the natural way of things, Liara. Just like us, Daku was a luminous being through the Force. Now he will rest and feed new life. I know you'll miss him. He brought a lot of joy into your life. Now he can be at peace." Liara nodded and wiped her eyes as Caseus set a small island flower by the rock. "Goodbye, Daku. And thank you." They stood for a little while longer, talking about memories of him. It seemed to help Liara by talking about the good times. Over the following days, her tears became laughs as she brought up more memories of her fuzzy friend, many of which were times Daku had stolen food from Cassie's hand when he wasn't looking, or when he slept on top of her stomach during a storm. Soon, they would return to their regular training, and Caseus was beginning to run out of things to push her and test her skill. The obstacle course was no longer a problem for her, and the exercises and drills he ran her through were becoming much less strenuous on her. Then he remembered something he still had in his possession. One night, as Liara was getting the fire started for their dinner, Caseus went inside and found his bag of belongings. Buried deep inside, covered in a wrap of thick cloth, was Master Takai's book, the one she had passed on to Caseus. Smiling fondly, thinking of her, he opened the cover and found the note he had saved from her.
Caseus, this book helped me when I was a Padawan. It contains hundreds of pages covering plenty of exercises and training routines that you may find very useful. Take good care of it. You may be passing it down to your student in time. I'll see you soon. Master Takai.
Caseus gently ran his fingertips across her name. She was right. He would be passing it to his student. Maybe not in the way he had planned when he was a Padawan. But Caseus couldn't think of any greater gift of knowledge he could give to her. That evening, as Liara slept, Caseus sat by a lamp and went through the pages of the book, writing down notes and tips for Liara. He even added a few exercises of his own for her. He was up nearly half the night before he slept. By the morning, Caseus was running on 4 hours of sleep. Not half as long as he would have liked, but it would be worth it. Stepping outside, he saw Liara already running through her exercises as she balanced on one hand and listened to the calming sounds of the sea. "Liara, come here." Dropping to her feet, Liara walked over, straightening her hair.
What is it?
"I have something for you." Caseus pulled out the book from behind his back and handed it to her.
A book?
"My master gave me this book a long time ago. It contains hundreds of exercises and techniques I haven't been able to teach you yet. Now I'm passing it on to you. Take good care of it." Liara gently took the book and flipped through a few of the pages, her eyes affixed on different passages and illustrations.
This is so cool. I want to try some of these.
"Go ahead. I'll be here to observe." Liara looked through the book and found a specific saber technique where the combatant pushes forward with 2 diagonal slashes before leaping forward and turning the body into another diagonal cut. This time, however, throwing their blade forward, keeping their grip on it through the force to extend the reach of their attack.
This one looks interesting.
"I don't know, Liara. That one seems a bit more advanced. I still have to teach you a proper saber throw."
Okay, so show me.
"All right, but we're using the sticks again for this." Liara nodded and grabbed the training sticks and handed one to Caseus, who walked over to a dead tree bordered by a few rocks, and hung from one of the branches a dinner plate, attached by leather cords.
What's that for?
"A target." Caseus stepped back and faced towards the sea, holding his training stick out in front of him. "Watch me carefully." Caseus breathed in and out and swiftly threw his weapon forward, out towards the sea, where it began to spin like a fan before returning to his grip. Caseus turned to Liara, who was eager to try it herself. "There's 3 things you need to know about this technique. First, be sure to hit only your target. Second, concentrate on keeping your weapon elevated when you throw. Third, and most importantly, when you call the weapon back to your hand, always make sure the blade is pointing away from you. Give it a try. Aim for the target." Liara looked carefully at the target before throwing her saber forward. Before she could maintain her focus and keep it elevated, it dropped to the sand. "Try again." Liara picked up her stick again and threw it, again and again and again. As Caseus watched her make attempt after attempt, he looked out over the sea and saw large dark clouds looming in the distance. "Liara, that's enough for right now. Let's head to the city. We need to buy a few things to fortify the ship for the storm."
But I've almost got it.
"Now, Liara, come on."
Fine.
Liara and Caseus hopped into the ship and took off towards the city, as the clouds grew closer. Upon reaching the landing bay, they set the ship down and walked out into the streets. Stopping by a few shops, Caseus grabbed supplies to help keep the ship from taking any damage from the weather, while Liara looked at her bag of credits. As she looked around at a few necklaces and trinkets, something caught her eye, sticking out of a large garbage bin. A rusty, beat-up pit droid. Stepping closer, she saw how horrible the condition was. A shattered optical lens, dents all over, and a missing arm. Liara looked over at the man sitting at a table not far from the bin.
Excuse me, how much for the droid?
The owner raised an eyebrow.
Rubbish that thing. Never worked properly to begin with. 2 credits and you can take it. No skin off my nose.
Liara reached into her bag and pulled out 2 credits, and handed them over before pulling the pit droid from the garbage and hauling it along. As she did, the shop owner caught a brief glimpse of the lightsaber tucked away in her belt under a gray sash.
What's that thing on your belt?
Liara's heart skipped a beat.
A code cylinder. Gotta go, thanks.
Before the shop owner could say anything, Liara was off down the street. As he saw her round the corner, his eyes narrowed. Pulling out a data pad, he pressed a few buttons before removing the comlink from his belt.
Hey, it's me. Might have a job.
Liara made her way back to the ship where Caseus was waiting. Liara, what did I tell you? Stay close to me.
I know, but check this out.
Liara held up the pit droid.
Isn't it cool? We could use a droid to help us with the ship.
Liara, that thing is junk.
Well, maybe we can fix it.
We should be focusing on your training.
We will, but maybe having something to do besides training could be nice.
Caseus sighed and looked at the droid. It wasn't completely unsalvageable. After all, it was a pit droid. Not exactly rocket science. Feeling a few drops of water on his skin, Caseus felt there was no time to argue. All right, get inside. We'll see what we can do later. Liara smiled and went inside as they flew the Nebulous back to the beach. The light drizzle of rain had become a harsh downpour by the time Caseus finished readying the ship for the weather. Sitting inside next to Liara, he dried his hair as she clenched the blanket of her bed. What's wrong?
Nothing. I don't like the thunder, you know?
Caseus closed his eyes and listened to the raging storm outside. It reminded him of Castellan. And Vader. Yeah. I know what you mean. Far off world, in a bar on Dayu, a bounty hunter sat in the back. This wasn't really his scene, but they wouldn't be here long. Suddenly, he heard a voice call him from around a corner.
Hey, Boomer, I think I got us a job. Something involving a Jedi.
Boba looked up from his table and over to his partner Dengar.
Tell me more.